Hey, thanks so much for finding the video. Do us a favor. If you haven't done so yet, please subscribe. Be sure to leave your comment. We love to interact. Enjoy the video. So Tuesday on the show, we learned that Florida had 5 positive COVID cases. This morning, every SEC coach was on the SEC coaches teleconference. Last evening, some word started to percolate and circulate a little bit that perhaps that number was going to tick up in Gainesville and the game was in jeopardy. So this morning, Ed Ogeron was on the SEC teleconference and was asked about the game and if he knew a timeline on if the game would be played.
Yeah, hopefully hopefully it would help us today. If the game is being played or not. But you know what? There's going to be a lot of doubt in our kids' minds. I understand that, but we need to stay focused. We've been through this before. There was a lot of doubt in the season that we wasn't going to play. I told the guys, block out the noise. The only thing we can focus on right now is to prepare to play, and then just wait to see what they make a decision. If they tell us we're playing, we're going to be ready. If they're not, we're going to move on to South Carolina.
So that was at 10 a.m. Central Time. Ed Ogeron, unsure. At 1 o'clock Central Time, Scott Strickland, the Florida athletic director, held a press conference and made this announcement.
Due to a significant number of COVID cases, we are unfortunately announcing a postponement of the Florida LSU game that was scheduled for Saturday, and have worked with Scott Woodward, the athletic director at LSU, along with the SEC office, Charlie Hussey, Mark Womack, and of course Commissioner Sankey, to tentatively have rescheduled that game for December 12th, which, as you know, was a date put in the league schedule for circumstances like this, because we anticipated there might be issues as we went through the season.
So a few things. First and foremost, let me point out the fact, before we talked about this specific instance, that this is 2 consecutive weeks now where LSU has had some flux in its schedule, and both times the situations were handled early in the week and flawlessly. I would like to commend LSU Athletic Director Scott Woodward, and certainly Scott Strickland in this instance, and Greg Sankey, for publicly being able to get all of this done in a timely and efficient manner and to have a unified public front. Doesn't everyone feel better when you know the answer, everyone's on the same page, presenting the same thing, and you move on with a plan to move forward? What a stark contrast from what we saw in the Big Ten after their cancellation announcement, from what we saw from the SEC back in 2016 with these Florida Gators and Jeremy Foley. All this does, Scott Woodward and Scott Strickland today here collectively shine a light on how inept the Jeremy Foley, Joe Oliva situation from 2016 was. Okay, I digress. To this specifically, I know that the Chicken Littles and the COVID counters, some of you are already out there on Twitter. I know what you're doing. You're taking victory laps and you're celebrating. You're pointing the finger. You're saying, you see, I told you, on and on and on, and all that nonsense. I would like to point out and echo what you just heard from Scott Strickland. The SEC, when they built their schedule, knowing that to appease you Chicken Littles and COVID counters, they were going to have to shove Q-tips up kids' nose 3 times a week, knew this was an inevitability, that there were going to be positive tests and there were going to be postponements and reschedules, and we've talked about that literally now for months, that this was an inevitability. The thing I said for months and months and months is they're going to play because they have to play. Now, how does that look? I don't know. Conference only, shortened season. Do they have postponements? Are there fans? Some fans, no fans? All that changed? Don't know. And we'll figure that out as we go. Well, lo and behold, we're figuring all that out as we go. But I'll remind you, this is why when the SEC constructed its schedule, they did it in the way it did. 10 games, every team had a bye, and they left open December the 12th, so that way if there was a game that needed to be moved, it could move into that window, and you could have the SEC championship game a week later on December the 19th, and then the next Tuesday, or the next Sunday, I guess, on the 20th, we would find out the college football playoff final ranking. So this actually was completely predictable that circumstances like this were going to arise. We've already seen it with Vanderbilt, Missouri, now with LSU, Florida, and there's a possibility that Ole Miss, Arkansas could be impacted. We'll talk about that a bit later as well. Maybe maybe, more coaches should have followed the LSU strategies. Many of you all who dumped on Ed Ogeron before the season started, we said most of our guys have had it. Well, that's why you're not seeing massive numbers of spikes from LSU, because I've told you this for months as well. You test positive, you don't have to test again for 90 days. That's according to CDC guidelines. So I'm not telling you that they were making positive kids sit next to the guys who hadn't had it yet at the lunch table, but it's also something that was inevitable, and LSU appears to have gotten through it already, which is why you're not seeing numbers and spikes in cases like this at LSU, period. Look, I'll also remind you that early in the Major League Baseball season, this happened. And when the Marlins had their spike and everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, the Chicken Littles freaked out. They should cancel the season, a bubble immediately. This was doomed to fail. Well, the playoffs are going on and it's just fine. The NFL, the New England Patriots, the Tennessee Titans, we've seen games shuffled and rescheduled, and a game played on a Tuesday. Okay, you have a game next week played at 4 o'clock Central Time on a Monday. Okay. We've had some teams shuffle their schedules. Okay. You want to know why? Because they're determined to make it work. They're finding a way, and I salute them for that. They're juggling a million balls in a rainstorm because you Chicken Littles won't play ball. You have to accept the fact that disruption is going to happen. It's part of this, and you find a way. It's what every league has done so far. It's what college football is doing. It's what the SEC is doing. And now it's LSU's turn in the rotation. They in Florida will move this game to December 12th, and they'll move on. Now, I would like to point out that just from a practical standpoint, it is fundamentally absurd that at the University of Florida, you have 18 healthy young people who are either asymptomatic or experiencing mild symptoms, and you're postponing this game because of that. That annoys me to my core. Scott Strickland talked about that.
Fortunately, all those who are positive in this instance, including some coaches and some football staff, they seem to either be asymptomatic or only experiencing mild symptoms. So that's obviously a positive right now. Hopefully they'll continue to not have more severe symptoms.
I'll share this with you. I've shared it before, but I'll do it again. And a lot of my feelings on this stems from my own life experience, as is the case for many of you. And many of you know that my son was in the hospital for 7 months after he was born, and he has had and still has severe cardiovascular and respiratory shortcomings. He was essentially born with one lung and a bad heart. So he is very susceptible to stuff like this. And I can remember his surgeon, Dr. Olyinka Olatoya, who is maybe the greatest human being that I know. He's this amazing, sir. Google his name. He's a Nigerian-born surgeon who is just a magnificent human being, and literally the greatest human being that I know. And Erica would always get very anxious, and we would look at these monitors and all these numbers that we were tracking, and he would say, "How does he look?" And he would do this thing where he would he'd take his finger and he would circle his face. Anytime Erica was upset, like if his blood saturations was at a 75 and it should have been at like an 85 or a 90, and he would do this. How does he look? Well, he looks fine. Okay, so for this particular instance, don't chase the number, look at the patient. Look at what we're doing. You have healthy teenage and early 20 guys with a runny nose and a headache. They're fine. They're okay. The fact that we are fundamentally changing our way of life because of healthy young people with the sniffles is stupid. It is stupid. It is a stupid thing to do. But we must appease those of you, Chicken Littles and COVID counters out there, who are determined to wreck everyone's way of life. And I'm just not going to be silent on this anymore. So that's going to annoy some of you, and that's fine. A lot of you got after me yesterday on Twitter after my rant about New Orleans, but more of you were complimentary. More of you have said, thank you for saying what I've been screaming internally for so long. At some point, we got to get on with life, and I'm going to keep screaming it as often as I possibly can. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.